So Reboot Study is an extremely exciting study because we have been working in Gulf War illness now for 20 years. And along the way, what you do early when you're trying to learn about something is try to figure out what's broken, what's wrong. And we discovered very early on that a lot of things are broken, and you can't explain this illness by just one thing. The immune system's doing weird things. The brain is doing things. The neuroendocrine system is doing things. So rather than look at this illness through, a single little lens of trying to understand it just as an immune system problem or something, really early on, we figured out it's way more complicated than that. Enter supercomputers and people that know how to play in that playground. We have the great fortune to work with some of the most brilliant people who use chaos theory and supercomputers and Watson-esque kind of ways to try to understand really complicated things. And they not only were able to knit together all these broken bits and pieces of what we see in Gulf War illness into a single model, they were able to take that model and use it to create a clinical trials platform in a computer, and that the computer could predict for us, not just any computer, 6 supercomputers working for 3 weeks, running gazillions of different types of possibilities. That rising to the surface of all that came some mechanisms that if we hit this button and then waited a while, kept everything straight in that space, and then hit this button, we could reboot the system back into a normal path. This is a hypothetically curative an approach. We're not just trying to make things prop up. We're trying to fix it. We were funded thanks to the DoD, the CDRMP program, to do this study where we applied this 1-2 punch kind of approach to the first set of veterans. We had 19 veterans in this first study. We moved the needle. We were able to move it towards normal. We didn't snap it into place the way we'd hoped, but we moved the needle. So then we had to go back and say, well, what could make this different? Perhaps we didn't use drug A long enough. The drug A, by the way, is a drug that reduces inflammation in the brain, and we only used it for a month. So we said, what if we use this drug longer? What if we used it for 3 months and really got the immune system, the neural networking in the brain calmer before we hit the second button, a button that reboots the neuroendocrine system back into normal function? And so this second study, the one we're recruiting now, is that it's 3 months of a drug that quiets the immune system in the brain, and then 1 week of a drug that allows us to reboot the neuroendocrine networks. And then we watch for some months after that to see whether or not we were successful. And because we did this whole thing by putting people on a bike and measuring everything under the sun, we put them on the bike at the beginning and measure everything under the sun. And then we measure them again at the end to see if we were successful. And that's basically the study. Now, it happens that these are 2 repurposed drugs where the safety profiles are well known and well understood. And so we can reasonably tell anyone in this study, and we do that through an informed consent, what we know about the safety of these drugs. And like I say, we pull this from all the work. In the case of the one drug, it's been used a lot in rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis. It's been around 18 or 19 years. And the other one, mifepristone, is one that's been used for people with adrenal disease and whatnot for at least 8 or 9 years. So we have a lot. They're what's called repurposed drugs, drugs that we already understand, not brand new drugs. Its safety is unknown. If it's promising, that's the strength. If it's safe, people actually take the medicine, and it's promising, then we get to move on to this phase 2 study. There you do it in a much larger number of people, a much more convincing number of people, and you do it in what they call a randomized trial. Half the people will get placebo and half the people will get the therapy. So that'll be the phase 2. But this is the phase 1. Everyone is treated, and we learn from this study. And it's also a mechanistic study. We're going to redo all those things I said we did with the bike and measuring everything to see if it actually changed the underlying mechanism, the underlying what's going on with homeostasis, the way we predicted. It's not the only study we're doing. We actually are doing, at least a half a dozen active studies right now, more like a dozen. There's a lot of different work going on down in our group and across the country. So there's a lot of places you can look for studies, clinicaltrials.gov, and against Gulf War illness, and you'll see everything going on in the entire country. But our website, which you should see below, has what we're doing, and we're very excited. We have studies that are very much focused on the underlying mechanisms of the illness, and we're trying to push those buttons that could potentially change the way your body is feeling and behaving, and not just covering up the symptoms, but actually getting at the causes. So we're very, very excited about, the way we approach this illness. We couldn't do it without you. Entirely, all of this work is done because veterans have volunteered to be in the studies. Between us and getting it all the way out there is how many volunteers we can get, how fast. We're funded, we're ready to go. We want to get this done, and we'll do it with your help.